So we're back on site in Carrick. We had students arrive from the summer school in Maynooth and from Maynooth Anthropology Department on Monday. So they spent a couple of days on tour, but our numbers have swelled on site, which means we're starting digging properly or getting a lot more done this week. It also means, as you can see, the cutting 4, if you remember from one of our updates in previous seasons, has got an awful lot bigger. So you'll see the guys standing further up, Sally and Catherine, sort of in the deeper hole. Thanks, Sally. That's what cutting 4 was, that's the shape and size of it. And you can see we've extended it significantly. And you may recall we'd originally put this in to look for the eastern extent of the chapel, which we didn't find definitive evidence of, but previously we did get a small bit of evidence, which I'll just point out. So I'll hop into this hole. We had last season, we had an awful lot of rubble in this area of the cutting here that we thought could potentially be related to maybe the wall being one side or the other, and it's discard from the quarrying processes. So they took what stone they wanted, brought it off site, and the rest they just threw to the side, and this rubble deposit could be related to this. But what I'm standing on is approximately the 12th and 13th century occupation levels. So down at about this level of the cutting, last time we were here, we got an awful lot of pottery relative to what we're getting in the rest of the trench. That was all 13th and 14th century in date. And beneath that, we got a grey sort of compact layer, similar to what we've been finding in other cuttings that we've interpreted as the 12th century occupation level. So this is the joys of archaeology. We know there's nice archaeology down here, but we have to get through 2 or 3 foot of rubbles and bank deposits and bank slips to get to that. So a bit of a hard slog in store for the guys for the next, I suppose, 2 or 3 days, but we'll be getting down to the proper archaeology then. So that's what's happening in cutting 4. We'll nip over to cutting 3. So it's empty, because at the minute we have Michael-Anne and Bavino from the Discovery Programme giving a talk inside. So the diggers have gone in for the next hour or so, but they are in there giving that a good clean up and getting it ready for photographs and getting it ready to check the plans from last season. What we're doing that's different this year, I guess, is we're opening up an extension that the string is pointing out to the cutting's eastern extent. And the main reason we're doing that is to investigate the floor levels of the chapel. So the chapel has always thrown up a few problems or a few questions we haven't fully been able to answer, because we have one wall at a quite low level, which is this wall here, and then nipping across, it continues along this way, but it comes right up high and goes up there. So we've always had difficulties trying to find the finished floor level, which could potentially be as high as here. Okay, but then what is this mortar slip? So we're trying to piece back together where the finished floor level of this building was. We never got to dig this cutting. All this was taken out in the 1980s. So it'll be very useful for us to break virgin ground and actually have a look through our own eyes and have a look for ourselves. Hence the extension on this side. Okay, so that's what will be happening in cutting 3. Cuttings 1 and 2 are sadly nearing a conclusion. Do you want me to nip over, Alan? Have a look? Yeah. So in cutting 1, you can see we're opening up an internal, what we'd call a sondage, a cutting within a cutting, and we're taking it down another foot and a half. What we're looking to get down to is this grey clay here. Okay, we're starting to see that this is consistent across the site. We had it in 2, we have a variant of it in 4, we have it in 1, and as I've said in many previous updates, we think that is the 12th century occupation level. Okay, it's around about this level that we start getting the posts, the stakes. It's immediately above this in cutting 2 that we got the large charcoal spread that we dated to the turn of the 12th century. So sort of 1170 to 1220, turn of the 13th century I should say. So we're getting down to the 12th century here. The reason we're not doing that across the entire cutting, 2 very good reasons. One is we don't want to dig everything. We want to leave it for future generations. And this is a research excavation. We're here to gather information. The site's not at risk. So we want to leave an awful lot, or in fact most of the site behind. We also don't want to undermine the walls. So you can see right the way around where that lower area is, we've left a metre or 2 in each case and not gone near any of the walls. So there's no danger of the walls collapsing in time. So we'll finish out that lower box, 2 of the 12th century levels, resolve them, and then the plan is to say goodbye to cutting 1, which is unfortunate because it's some of the nicer archaeology to view, but that's something we have to think of in terms of our management and conservation of the site. So our management and conservation plan is all but complete. As soon as that is done, what we're going to have to do is talk to National Monuments and think, how do we want to represent the archaeology on the site? Is it just through signage? Is it digitally? Is it through replica on the surface? That's a conversation we have to have. But obviously we still want this cutting to be visible or decipherable, or for people to be able to come to this fence still and understand what they're looking at. But we will have to say goodbye to the archaeology for its own protection. The same applies to cutting 2, which if you pan around you can see it. So we have one lone archaeologist left in the corner. Gwyneth's by herself. She's figuring out the last couple of puzzles, but I'll hop in just to be in shot. Up. And there's virtually nothing left in here. We've dug pretty much all the archaeology. We're down to these natural soils, these orange clays across the top of the site. So what this will become is our spoil heap, and we'll backfill it as we dig the next cutting. So the site will systematically be moved around. But there are other issues we have to think about again in terms of the presentation of the site. And this is another conversation we're going to have to monuments. Which level do we restore? Do we restore the 12th century level, the 13th century level, or the site as we found it, or I should say it was found in the 1980s by Claire Cotter? What level do we backfill to? So it's a conversation we're still having, it's something we're still sort of fully articulating out, but it's always a quandary for archaeologists of what part of the past we put most importance on. The last feature that Gwyneth is working on, we're going to be honest, we don't have a clue what it is. There's a sheer cut. By cut we mean some sort of a ditch or a pit that's going straight down towards the edge of the ringwork monument. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get in too much of it because it's simply getting too deep. We're going to have to backfill the cutting, record it, photograph it, and come back and get it in a later season when maybe we can take out a whole portion of that site and step it and do it more systematically and more safely. So lots of little bits going on in 1 and 2. Cutting 3 being tidied up, and definitely the main digging action in cutting 4. So come back in another few days because we've only been here for digging for about 4 hours, with a big crew anyway, and we'll have a lot more to tell you hopefully by the middle of next week. Thanks very much.